Welcome to the Digital Remodeler podcast. So glad you've chosen to join us today. And with me is Rich Tygett from IC Insurance Solutions. Rich, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here, Carl. Thanks for having me.
So, Rich, you have been working with general contractors for over 20 years. And what drew you into this niche and why so specifically working with general contractors?
Well, I liked the challenge it posed originally, and we went from personal insurance to commercial insurance at one point where I switched firms and learning about the general contractor and the coverages and dynamicisms there is pretty incredible. Their requirements, their commitments they have, and ultimately these are people who have a product at the end who take pride in that product. It's a pretty interesting realm, if you ask me.
Fantastic. And so when a general contractor calls you for the first time, what situation do they generally find themselves in?
They commonly need a policy to get a job, or they need to know what costs they would have to procure policies to bid a job.
That's good.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. What's the most common, I'm going to call it panic call, you get from a general contractor who suddenly realizes they need insurance?
Yeah, well, a policy had lapsed and now someone's asking for coverage again, and that's enough to make you want to jump. You have the ability to get a job, but you're missing a key component, which is a piece of paper that says you are covered, you're legitimate,
Mm,
you're
good.
responsible.
So many general contractors see insurance as something they just need in order to produce a certificate and start a job. But from your perspective, what are they actually missing?
Well, I'd say that we all share in the risk. Not any one of us can handle one of these losses, so we all pay into it, assuming if we are the ones who are on the hook, we're not able to pay that ourselves. We're going to be sharing that risk. Carrier would step in and help adjust the claim for us where there's been maybe a catastrophic event or an injury, and we need someone else to foot that bill. That's not something we can do ourselves. So it's more or less sharing in the risk rather than it being a burden. I try to make it shown that it's just a part of doing business.
Absolutely. What do you think is the biggest misconception that a GC has about their general liability policy and what it actually covers?
Well, I think a lot of times the client, a contractor in this case, thinks that that general liability just covers everything. And there's more to it. There's understanding tools and equipment, inland marine coverage in case you're in charge in the custody or care of others' equipment. What happens if that equipment gets damaged? So there are multiple lines of insurance for each sort of a gap or where there's not a mention of coverage, we bring another line of coverage in. So I'd say the best thing for contractors is asking more questions is what does this cover? What are the exposures I have? What are my policies lined up doing for me?
Yeah. So, Rich, could you give us a story, maybe, or an example about a GC who thought they were covered, but discovered there was actually a gap in their coverage?
Well, I don't have a nasty story like that in particular. We do have, like, I remember almost a little outside of the realm that I work in, but there was a window washer who used a nice razor from Europe to really get those windows clean nicely. And he was working on a set of windows on a home that, let's see, the home overlooked the ocean and they had a special reflective coating on that, on the glass, and he scratched that. And he scratched many panes of it, not just single pane. And the fact that that's the part of the job he was working on, the carrier doesn't want to cover your work. if you damage your work on the project, that's considered, um, it's excluded from the policy. So in that case, that contractor had a situation where he wanted coverage, but couldn't get it because it was the actual work he was doing at the job that he
Mm,
damaged. So that was an unfortunate situation where general liability is for exposures for others. If someone else receives property damage or an injury based on your work. But the lineage is defined as your work is not covered in the policy, whereas these other exposures are. So that was a huge gap for that individual.
that's good. Yeah, I think sometimes the assumption a lot of GCs make is I've got general liability coverage. It just covers, almost everything. And
Yep,
there's just a lot of assumption that goes on oftentimes.
I agree.
Let's talk about a common risk, and that's when we bring subcontractors into the equation. Most residential GCs rely heavily on subcontractors. And so, what are the biggest insurance mistakes that general contractors make when bringing subs onto a project?
They often don't schedule the subs properly. So using and understanding how to use subs properly is imperative for contractors. When you have a certain set of requirements as a contractor to a client to perform a job, you have to provide those insurance certificates back in their favor. So now you put yourself in that situation where now you're the consumer utilizing a sub. You need to bring their insurance requirements as well as an agreement between you, have a contract, a subcontractor agreement, because you want to further separate yourself from the work that contractor does. So they're responsible for any damages that seem to be or were proven to be their fault.
That's good. And what should a general contractor always verify about a subcontractor's insurance before letting them work on a job site? What things about their insurance should be verified?
Well, commonly the certificate of liability is a trusted instrument. So once the client receives that, it's dated, it shows their coverage properly, then the client can rest assured that that instrument is real and true and will be there for them if there's a challenge, a problem in the future.
Okay. Have you ever, seen in your experience a place where a general contractor has had an issue because they made a mistake with the subcontractor's insurance or didn't verify the subcontractor's insurance?
Yeah, the problem is that most of the times they don't gather and collect the information from the sub. And so it's not until an audit appears, and that's usually where it's a monetary type penalty. It's not so much that there's been a claim, but the claim can be a real problem as well. But commonly, the contractor is not gathering the proper certificates from the sub. So at audit, they can get higher incremental premium assessed to them because they didn't show that this sub was a true sub. So maybe they're considered an employee. But now the flip side is if there was damage, then there's no way to gather or receive coverage from that sub after the fact, then the contractor's on the hook for that. And then as well as one of the employees of a sub gets injured, and you definitely want to make sure that you have workers' comp on your sub because now this is going to come back on you and your general liability is not going to want to pay for employment related problems.
Mm,
So you have a huge gap if you're not using subcontractors properly, huge exposure.
that's good. Let's talk about, bidding jobs and the insurance requirements that come with that. You've mentioned previously that general contractors should send their broker the insurance requirements for a project before they bid it. Why is that so important?
So there's oftentimes we'll find that in the insurance requirements themselves, that the client is asking for coverages that the contractor does not currently carry. And a lot of times the coverages they want are not even really appropriate to our relationship this contractor has with the client. So we'll suggest that the contractor negotiate with the client for some of the requirements. And in a lot of cases, the client will come back and agree to some of the stipulations, but not others. And so that's when we have to place another line of business. Often it's excess liability. So the client is either affluent or they've already had a bad experience and they're never going to get caught without the right insurance again. So they command extra coverage in those insurance requirements. And so our client may get the professional part waived if they want E&O, errors and omissions. But then if they're saying, well, we want 5 million excess liability, they commonly will hold to that. Because again, we have a client who is affluent, who has something to lose. So they're going to command a higher level of coverage over every line of business. So excess would go over general liability, commercial auto, workers' comp, for example. And it doesn't have to be just 1 million. Some clients want multiple factors of millions of dollars of extra coverage over these. So every client's different, every job is different. And we take that into account when we recommend that they try to negotiate coverage away, or we recommend that we just go get this quoted so you know what your burden looks like and you can include that in your bid.
Good. So what happens when a general contractor wins a job and then realizes the insurance requirements are actually higher than the coverage they currently carry?
It can be devastating. It often is the difference between portions of profit, not all profit, but it's a portion of what they expect to make in a profit. And that's important on a job, of course. We're not out there working for free. We do have a fee for our service. So in that regard, we would not want to see a contractor bid a job, underbid it because they didn't know their cost, where it's just a simple matter of us reading those requirements and bringing these items out into play. These instruments can often be waived, or the client will just command that we bring them. And then it's just a part of us going and gathering the different insurance lines of insurance, presenting them to the insured, our contractor, so they can make a decision on if they can bid this job. Can they make this work on their end if they're awarded it with the new insurances they might need?
Okay. Now, today, obviously, online insurance, big thing. Uh, and then there's real guidance, working with someone like yourself. And so a lot of contractors want to go the easy, convenient route, sit in front of their computer and do it themselves. And when we talk about this, what's the thing that the online platforms do right, and where do they fall short? Where can a contractor really get burned with that quick do-it-yourself option?
Absolutely. So I think the online providers do one thing really, really good, which is write policies. They write an immense amount of policies. So the flip side is once a contractor selects different coverages or certain certificates that they might want, versus now they've purchased a policy and now the rubber meets the road, they have a question. Or oftentimes I get multiple questions when I'm speaking to an insured. So what we find is they contact the company back or go back online, and instead of being able to do an instant chat or speak to somebody like before the purchase, after the fact, it's more like you're going to get in line and you're going to have a call back, or you're going to wait for your question. And if you have multiple questions, it might be that when you finally get your call back, you're able to ask the questions and the person you're speaking to can maybe answer one of the three. And so now they'll say someone else is going to call you back for the other two questions. And now you're waiting again for these other two questions. So the personalized service is lacking. And so when you need help and have a question, it might take time. And it might take multiple sources to get you sourced and your questions answered.
Hmm. And you haven't quite said this, but let's kind of go a little step further with that. Contractors are dealing with multiple risks, highly complex, and kind of the 900-pound gorilla sitting in the corner is that online platform is not going to help you flush out those risks.
I
So
agree.
that conversation is part of the advantage of working with someone like you.
I
You
like
can ask
that.
the right
Yes,
questions, wouldn't you say?
absolutely. And interacting, just having the ability to get in touch with your person. I like to consider myself more of a trusted advisor. You know, I am the insurance broker, but any of my insureds that you speak to, I think I'm held in a higher light or more regard than just a person or a broker. Someone who they can get answers from, call me anytime on any topic. We truly become friends in many ways. So it's a
That's
lot
good.
deeper than a computer program or selecting, point and click and select your coverage.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to bring that out because there's something to be said for experience. The one thing that an algorithm can't do is it can't replace insight and experience.
I like that. Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly.
And now I'm biased because I'm an old bald guy. So,
You like good service, don't you, Carl?
yeah, that's right. I like good service. I
Yeah.
like perspective. So, as a contractor grows from a small crew into managing multiple projects and multiple teams of subs, how should their insurance strategy be evolving?
Yeah, I think in a similar way. So you're becoming more dynamic as you take these larger jobs. The contractor has more and more ability as time goes on. They become more comfortable taking these jobs. So it's almost similar on my end where we have a person who we want to see do well. They want this job as well. So on our end, having the ability to help either manipulate, push them forward. Sometimes we pull the reins back and say, maybe this job isn't the right one for you. It's a smaller job. They want a lot of coverage. Are you going to have more opportunity with this client in the future? Is this a one-off? Are you doing this because you want referrals? What's the reason we would bend so much for somebody, right? So if it's not necessarily in the benefit of my contractor, this is something that we're certainly going to share with them. And if we feel like it's a good opportunity, we're going to push and say, yeah, go for this one. These are the dynamics involved. Here's the differences maybe you need to do to adjust your insurance program. And if that all makes sense, then go for it. Give
Hmm,
your bid.
that's good. Let's talk about trust and relationships. And you've delved into this really in this last one, developing that relationship to where you can speak honestly. This may not be the right thing for you. A lot of your clients come from referrals. Someone says, just call Rich, and whatever he recommends, you need to follow his advice.
We hear that a lot.
How do you build that level of trust?
I don't know. I think I'm individually me. I'm more than just talking to our insureds contractors about their coverage or their jobs. I'm more interested in how did you get started being a contractor? What do you like to do with your time? What are you doing this weekend? And what are you looking forward to? It's not always work or swinging a hammer. Oftentimes it's getting on the motorcycle or doing the fly fishing or pulling stuff out of the woods like me, just whatever the day holds. Like, I love my professional job, but I can't wait to get out with the chainsaw and knock some trees down that are problematic or whatever the case is, right? So I think there's quite a bit to the relationship, and it's not just a matter of we don't just contact each other when there's job or business. We're more interested in the family aspect, your personal, the things that make you happy personally. What would you rather be doing than swinging the hammer, right? These
Yeah,
are the things people like to talk about themselves, and certainly love to share their hobbies and what they enjoy doing. And I think a lot of the times, like, we work to maintain a lifestyle, but we also want to go and enjoy ourselves and have the entertainment, or what are the things we enjoy doing, habits and hobbies. So I
that's
think
good.
it's all a matter of we come to work together, and at the end of the day, we clock out and then we go hang out or have dinner, or we're finding similar in nature of what we'd like to do. There's not just all business.
That's good. So two final questions for you here. The first one is this. Uh, if a general contractor who's out here listening today could do one thing this week to better protect their business, what would you recommend?
Let's read your general liability policy together. We want to look at the conditions and exclusions that are hung on the policy. Oftentimes, this general liability policy is a perfectly good policy until the carrier hangs the conditions and exclusions on the end, which shapes the policy to their desires. So you can learn a lot by reading your policy, or send it to me and I'll read it for you and highlight it.
Good.
Yeah.
And then our final question here. What's the one question every general contractor should ask their broker, but almost nobody asks?
Wow. Gosh. I don't know. I might have needed to prep a bit for that one. What is one question they should be asking,
They should be asking, but but
but
hardly
they
anybody
don't?
asks.
How do I use subcontractors properly?
Oh, good, good.
I mean, I say it all the time, but I never hear them ask, and I have to kind of limit myself, because that's one of the that is the biggest gap that I see my contractors with. They don't understand how to bring this sub on. They want to call them a W-9 or whatever they can to make it seem like it's not their sub, right? Or their problem. So,
Mm.
but there are three steps to follow, and we should talk about it. Call me, let's talk about why you should ask me about how to use subcontractors properly.
I think we have another podcast episode coming up on that
I
topic.
it could be a full 30 minutes of how to use your subs.
I think so. I think
Yep.
so. So to our audience, look forward to having Rich come back. We're going to make an episode out of that. So, Rich,
Fantastic, Carl.
if somebody wants to know more about you and know more about IC Insurance Solutions, where can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, come view us online at letter C, INS solutions.com, or call my cell phone, 916-224-2270.
All right. Rich, thanks for joining us on the Digital Remodeler podcast today. And to our audience, thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Carl. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Bye.